My name is Julia Simon, and I own this restaurant called Plant Joy. We're in our second year of business. Before we had Plant Joy, we had a lovely spot called Nourish, Charlotte, which does all this gorgeous meal prep, organic, sustainably sourced. I've been vegan since 2011. I'm a lifelong vegetarian. I went vegetarian at 13 after PETA found me as a young tyke and kind of laid out the stories of factory farms for me. It was, 13, 14, 15, that's kind of how, when you're figuring out who you are, what you stand for, what your belief set is, and it just did not make sense to me to support mass death with my diet. I will say that cheese kept me vegetarian for a good long while. I can vividly remember the taste of aged bries. But as I aged, got closer to 30, I started not feeling well every time I ate dairy products or eggs or vegetarian food, right? Felt that I was feeling a whole lot better when I ate whole foods plant-based. That's the end of that. I made the big change. A year later, I started Nourish, and that type of food became a whole lot more accessible for me. And I've not looked back. I feel amazing. My blood work's amazing. I'm in great health. 41, and just enjoying the diet in general. So definitely a combination of ethical need, the need to eat well and support my belief set through my choices, my dietary choices and my purchasing choices, but then also the health aspect finding me a little later in life and kind of coaching me towards whole foods, plant-based, towards veganism. Seeing factory farm footage as a 13-year-old, there's actually a woman named Sue Ko. She's still an active artist. She made a lot of paintings of factory farms back when it was really hard to get photography or photographs of the interior of some of these places. I saw a couple of zines. I was part of a punk scene in South Florida, and punk rock and veganism have always had like a lot of crossover. So I was seeing a lot of zines, talking to a lot of older vegans, like older punk vegans, about like ethics and like how to be an ethical consumer. So I would say a confluence of Propaganda, the band, vegan punk band. I was listening to some music that talked about veganism. I was seeing photographs that were seriously disturbing, and then Sue Ko's paintings kind of nailed it for me too. And it just seemed like cognitive dissonance to eat meat. I just couldn't handle the dichotomy of like believing in a compassionate and loving world and eating death on a plate. Just didn't make sense. I always knew as a vegetarian that I needed to go vegan. Like I always knew that my ethics were really no animal products, don't support the system whatsoever. But I think I was like kind of addicted to cheese. I think, and this is back in the early 2000s. It was kind of difficult to access. We didn't have quite as many delicious things, and I think I was just being kind of weak-willed about it. Once I really started paying attention to my body and feeling how I felt after I ate dairy products, and really sort of got more sensitive to how I felt after eating, then I really got, like, my body kind of made it apparent that veganism had to happen. I feel like it's a challenging time to be like an aware and empathetic human, and I feel like we're looking, for me, as a sci-fi person, as a person that really would love to see humans make it off the planet in an equitable way, right? Not just like the billionaires, I'd love to see humans make it past Occam's razor, right? This like point where a lot of civilizations get, where things kind of crumble before we get to really progress to our next phase. And I truly believe, and I sound a little wingnutty with this, but I truly believe that the vegan diet and the vegan lifestyle is a very gentle way to treat the planet. It's a very good thing to do for our bodies, and it's one of the tools we can use as humans to get past this point and get to the next place that our species can get. So I believe in veganism's ability to help the planet and our bodies and our communities. I think that there are many facets to the diet that really help us be better stewards of the planet, better beings, better apex beings on this planet. I think the ideology has really captured my imagination and makes me want to work hard for the movement, organize things like VegFest, open vegan restaurants, and do the hard work of really living in it and helping the movement progress, specifically in Charlotte, but also nationally and internationally as well. Nourish, actually, it's a kind of a fun story. Nourish had a really great 2020. So Nourish grew 20% during the COVID years, and then it grew again in 2021, another 20%. And because of that kind of flux of income and the growth, kind of rapid growth that we experienced in 2020, we were able to open this small restaurant here. So it was actually the best year the company has had to date. People were worried about eating well. We were making it really easy for them. We grew the menu to encompass all kinds of local artisanal vegan products that were being made in or near Charlotte, North Carolina. I think that was part of it too. We became kind of this deliverable farmers market product, as well as doing all this really gorgeous, organic, sustainably sourced meal prep. So yeah, 2020 was a beautiful year for Nourish, and thus Plant Joy. I started Nourish in 2012.
Did you find that people want to eat this way? Was there like something you had to do to educate people, or did people just come to it?
It's a great question. So Nourish, so every year at Nourish, we do this really like large survey where we try to get like a bead on how people are interacting with the system, why they're buying Nourish, what's bringing them to us, right? We really want to know, because a lot of times we don't get to talk to the people that we're feeding because we're kind of these like food fairies, you know? We pack up these beautiful bags of food and just drop them on doorsteps and drive off. So these surveys are a really great way for us to get in touch with who we're serving. And always I am surprised by why people are buying Nourish. And really the main reason is because it's nutrient-dense, sustainably sourced food. That's reason number one, right? Veganism is kind of over here, right? Like down the line, maybe like 6 or 7 of the, 6th or 7th of the reason why people are buying Nourish. So people buy Nourish because they believe in its ability to support their health. They believe in the way that we source product and support local farms. They believe in the culture we're building at the company. And so we kind of get to like have that vegan conversation happen like through the back door, right? Because when people eat this way and they stay eating this way for a number of weeks, I suggest 3 minimum, they feel amazing, and that's what really captures their attention, and that's what captured my attention, right? Back when I was almost 30 and like every time I ate a plate of mac and cheese, I was like ready to pass out. When I stopped and really thought about how I felt after eating, I realized that this was the way my body preferred to eat. So I think that's an interesting piece about Nourish. And when we started in 2012, we really led with plant-based. We did not really use the V word as much as we do with Plant Joy and as much as we do now, because we felt we would like scare charlatans and make it a more difficult ramp. But we had great growth. That first couple of years, we grew by 300%. We've grown about 200% since then and stabilized right around where we are now, which is a variety. We do between 120 and 140 orders a week, dropped on Monday or Tuesday, and we ship some orders regionally through FedEx. But yeah, we probably do 900 servings of delicious vegan food a week and make it really easy to eat really well. I just own Nourish and Plant Joy, but I've had the joy of serving as president at Charlotte VegFest for the last 4 years. Unfortunately, 2 of those 4 years, we have not had a festival, so we're really excited about 2022 and bringing the festival in its full force to the Ford building at Camp North End, just up the hill here. I was explaining how Nourish had this really gorgeous year in 2020. We grew quickly thanks to COVID and the format, right? Meal delivery. So I found myself asking my key people, we all were like, what do we do now? Is there something new that we can do? Is there something that Charlotte needs? Is there a missing piece of the vegan puzzle, right? Like what's missing? And we felt like a lot of people were cooking meat substitutes, right? There's a huge amount of growth happening in the vegan movement right now around meat substitutes. We're talking beyond an impossible, but also the myriad types of ways that people are processing protein and making it, getting in between people and making that bad decision about bacon or ground beef, right? And there's a beauty to that, and I believe in it. But we're missing a trick a little bit here, right? Not remembering how important vegetables are, not telling the story of where that vegetable came from and highlighting its past life on the plate. So what we're trying to do here in like a kind of a fun, accessible, but kind of weirdo, arty way is making sure that vegetables are first and foremost, So instead of using like a faux ham, we'll take a local sweet potato and we'll smoke it, and then we'll braise it in a little maple and a little smoked paprika, and we'll use that as our ham plank and our yam and cheese, and we'll put a little local, gorgeous cashew-based brie from Asheville from Dairy Vegan Cheese on there, and we'll do a little bit of a spicy tempeh, and it'll make this gorgeous, super satiating sandwich that's like kind of burger-like, right? But so much better for you than, a processed meat substitute. And also tells the story of sweet potatoes in North Carolina, right? It's a native species. I believe that when you eat vegetables that are from, 40 miles from where you live, that were just picked and cured a couple weeks ago, that they have more nutrient density, that they're better for your body, that over time your body will come to know and choose those type of foods over big nationally produced protein substitutes. So that's kind of what we're trying to do at Plant Joy, is revel in plants and all they can offer. Not adjacent to restaurants that are making a lot of vegan burgers and things like that. I believe in that side of the conversation, but we felt the other side that conversation wasn't really had. We wanted to add our voice to that.
I feel like everybody can eat vegan, but not everybody can eat non-vegan. And so I feel like there's a bigger market, really.
Right.
But, I have a friend who, they went vegan after opening a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so they get all this hate, like, well, you don't have any meat, and so I'm going to quit going there, even though I like the ambiance, I like the staff, everything about the place is great, but you stop serving. Do you get any kind of hate?
I don't think we get like meat eating hate, but people that come to this vegan restaurant that aren't vegan think that we stock the meat substitutes. So when we don't have a Beyond Burger and an Impossible kebab or something to offer them, they can be angry about it, you know? So then we have to have this like kind of rapid conversation at the window around why we aren't doing that. And sometimes it just doesn't sit for people, right? So a great example is we have a gyro on the menu, and it's a veggie gyro. And it's a little bit retro, right? Because the vegetables switch up each week. You know, sometimes we'll do zucchini, eggplant, peppers, right? But these are just whole vegetables that we're marinating in a really punchy, delicious marinade. We're char grilling them to get some umami and some smoke on them. But that's the sandwich. You know, we add some tzatziki, we add a little bit of slaw, but the sandwich is really vegetable centric. And sometimes people just feel like we're being lazy, you know? And I'm just like, no, it's actually a lot more work to like put these beautiful cuts and this gorgeous prep on all these different vegetables and marinate them sufficiently and put a char grill on them than it is to patty, you know, like a Beyond mix, for instance, and put it on the flat top, right? So it is an interesting time because we, you know, we're having this conversation in the midst of all this like protein substitute stuff, and we really have to have that conversation every day.
Do you think that there's a potential for there to be a bigger market with vegan than a non-vegan?
I've always felt that way. I was talking to Jen from Sanctuary about this a couple months ago too, like vegan gluten-free. Like vegan gluten-free, allergen-free, right? Like lay this base level of extremely accessible, non-inflammatory food that is innately good for the human body. You can't be allergen sensitive to every allergy that's out there. Like we have a customer right now that's allergic to carrots. That's a new one for me, right? But we can lay a baseline that's really accessible and really health supportive and then add things on top of it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like everybody can eat vegan, gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free, almost, right? Coconut's a big allergen that we're talking a lot about lately too. But yeah, if you build this pyramid with a really broad base that's accessible by everybody, there's only telling what the market can prove for you there. So yeah, I agree.
I like to call it a sophisticated palate that we've developed. It'd be nice to kind of inspire other chefs and restaurants in some way. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to achieve with interviews with people like you. I think if a chef is really into this variety and making something out of what others feel like is nothing, typically people think, well, it's restrictive, you're taking something away. But as a result, we end up adding so much more because we find so many new things in that discovery to replace that. You know, so I find when people go vegan, they tend to diversify their
palate for sure.
Yeah. And so I didn't know if there's anything.
So me as a vegan chef talking to non-vegan chefs?
Yeah.
I'm 10 years into being a vegan chef in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm part of a culinary guild called the Piedmont Culinary Guild. Matt Martin, former chef of Fern, and me are the only vegan chefs in this guild. I would say the attitude that Maddie and I have both taken to having those type of conversations is nurturing. I invite them to come and eat. Chef Coleman is one of my favorite local chefs. He owns the Goodyear House. Super vegan friendly guy, very open to any ideas. Like they actively cook with nutritional yeast at the Goodyear House. It's kind of weird for a non-vegan restaurant, right? In my opinion, they have one of the best vegan mac and cheeses that exists in the Southeast. It's a delicious dish, the smoked cashew mac and cheese. But Chris Coleman's a good example of somebody who just wants to cook with everything, you know? So when he brings us samples of dishes he's working on and we like give him notes, you know, that seems like a really cool, really interesting piece of community, and I'm here for that, you know? But if I'm yelling at people about not using butter on their turnips, right? That's not gonna work. So I feel like the best thing to do is to lead by example, talk about sustainability. Plant Joy specifically really is trying to sit at that confusing fork of farm to fork, sustainably sourced cuisine and veganism. And it seems like it wouldn't be that confusing, right? We're talking about vegetables. Like when we're talking about farm to fork, obviously we live in an area with a lot of pig and dairy and beef farms and cattle farms, right? But really, I mean, most of the farms that are close to Charlotte are vegetables, right? So we really there shouldn't be a mystique around this. It shouldn't be a difficult reach. But I do think that chefs in general and chef culture in general, and coming from the 90s and the early aughts, right? We're all about this global sourcing and this idea of luxury being, you know, lobster shipped across 3 continents in an ice bucket on a plane or something like this. And I feel like if we can really bring our focus back to where we are living and where we're sourcing, not only is it better for the planet, but it's much better for our bodies. And when we're talking about things to cook with year round, it's just going to be easier for that to be vegetables.
Do you ever change your menu up here? Is it like seasonally based at all?
Yes, we do some seasonal switch ups at Plant Joy. We are heavily affected by the seasons here at Plant Joy because we are a food stall. The outside environment really does interact with the kitchen and our customer base in a way that a restaurant doesn't have. So yeah, we switch things up. We definitely think about, like, we don't do a soup du jour from, you know, basically April on because it's too warm and people don't like it. When we come back into the summertime, we do more salads. You know, we have this beautiful polenta-based salad, our fattoush salad that we added back to the menu recently. We switch up our wine list and our beverage list pretty drastically. So yeah, seasonality is a huge piece here. And then we also think a lot about what we can get. You know, in the wintertime, the beauty of sweet potatoes in North Carolina is you can pretty much get them year round, right? Kale too, we can always get kale. Gets a little crispy in the winter, gets a little wilty in the summer, but it's workable, right? And it's full of phytonutrients and it's full of nutrition because it was farmed 20 miles from here and picked, you know, last week or a couple days back. So always we feature North Carolina products here. But really, we're always trying to make the case of beautiful vegetables cooked well, can be the center of the plate. They can be super satisfying. They can sate you and not only make you feel full and happy, but also make your body feel amazing. That's what we're trying to do here at Plant Joy.
Do you feel like veganism inhibits or enhances your potential as a chef?
I will say that being known as a vegan chef, I think that it can be easy to kind of not be taken as seriously. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, I've never cooked meat. If you put me in front of chicken, I would not know what to do. And I feel like there is something to be said for if chef is your claim and your name for what you do in the world, maybe you should know how to cook everything under the sun, right? But I mean, I've never been a chef and been comfortable with cooking meat, so I just don't know. So I think that's part of it. I think maybe we don't have all the processes, and so we can be taken a little less seriously. But I do think that I've had a lot of really great conversations with other people in the culinary community here in Charlotte over the last few years as people get more comfortable with this idea of cooking vegetables and cooking in a vegan way. I've been asked a lot of questions about what to do and what to feature and how to do it. So I think that chefs are coming around, and I think that especially as like the market share grows and they're asked for more vegan food, they're forced to kind of think this way. And so they come to us that have been doing it for a while for advice, and that makes sense to me.
Do you feel like it enhances or inhibits though?
If you eat the way you are cooking, you're going to be better at cooking the way that you want to cook. And this is one of the other reasons why I went vegan before starting Nourish, is I knew that if I stayed vegetarian or like gave myself the butter out, you know, that I wouldn't do as good a job with vegetables as I knew I wanted to. I think vegan chefs know vegetables intimately in a way that chefs have never known vegetables before. And I don't think we've even seen the potential of really sitting in the vegetable kingdom as our muse and our source. I don't think we have any idea what's next. And I think there's just so much potential for gorgeous vegetable dishes, and gorgeous vegetable-centric cuisine is going to only bloom and grow, because here we are all sitting in vegan ingredients and vegetables, and that's all we have to choose from. So we're going to develop new techniques. We're going to think about new palettes. We're going to do new things that just haven't been done yet.
You mentioned never having eaten meat. I know somebody who's vegan from birth, and she tasted these things just to see what it was like, just so she could know how to cook better for like guys she was dating and stuff.
Feel her pain. Yeah, that's funny.
Have you ever considered that?
No. No, and I think that's a really interesting point. So when we talk about what we're trying to do here, right, at Plant Joy, where we're trying to center vegetables and stay away from meat substitutes, we're definitely also trying not to mimic the standard American diet, right? We're not really interested in that, right? I would love for us, and maybe if we're lucky and we get to grow this into a restaurant someday, I'd really like for us to explore what hasn't been done yet, right? Like, what can vegetables do that they have not done yet? Like, what is something new that we can bring to the table? So I think, I feel her, and I feel like there's, I was talking to Akil from Vigo about this the other day. There's all these different doorways in the movement, and the first doorway is going to be vegetables that taste like non-vegetables. And that makes sense. There has to be a way for people to come in that want to go vegan because they believe in the movement. It's either good for their bodies, or they believe in the way that it can make the planet heal itself. There's a way that they're coming into the movement, but they're afraid of the food being crappy, right? So that's that first doorway, is like vegetables that taste like non-vegetables. And then there's all these other ways that people are cooking. And for us, we're over here trying to be like, no, that yam is totally a ham, or like that yam is totally just a savory slab of deliciousness that you're going to enjoy and your body will recognize as beautiful and satiating, but isn't really trying to be one thing or the other. It's really trying to just revel in vegetables in a new way. That's what we're trying to do. But I do think there is room here. I think that, and I don't think we get to shame or push or pressure anybody either. Everybody has a different path into the movement. My path was definitely full of Boca burgers back in the day. I mean, hell, I probably ate one a day, if not more, and so I can't judge. And I was talking about being addicted to cheese. It was a problem. I couldn't, I wanted to make, I ate so much cheese, and I felt so bad after doing it, and I still did it for years, So I think we have to make space for everybody and all the different times and ways that people come to the movement. So if that's her specialty, is helping people walk through that first door, 100% legit. And I'd like to be over here where people are tired of eating the Impossible Burgers and really want to try really just eating whole foods, plant-based, and see how their body feels. That's where I'd like us to be. I'd like for us to be the restaurant people can go to for that.
What kind of changes did you experience going from vegetarian to vegan? Like physiologically, mentally, emotionally, anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I lost weight. Obviously, that's the big change that that happens with people. I definitely was starting to see some blood pressure issues, and I'm like 28, right? A little early for this. High blood pressure. I was seeing some cholesterol stuff start to pop up. I was not enjoying my numbers, and in general, just felt lethargy. Like every time I ate, I felt lethargic, and I feel like I don't know what to say about that. I think we're used to that in America. I definitely think fast food America, I definitely feel like food is a drug in a lot of conversations in this country. But I guess I just came to a place where I wasn't willing to do that anymore. And I come from a family of, there's definitely food addiction in my family. There's definitely that piece for me. Food is a healing agent. Food can really help take you to the next place in your life, help break some bad patterns, help really make you feel nourished and well, and so that's kind of part of the conversation that we're trying to have here too. I was there with the cheese addiction too. It can be tough making big change in your diet. But I did it, and I did it for 3 weeks. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it for 3 weeks, no cheese for 3 weeks, and we'll see what happens. And it felt so good that I just never went back.
It's interesting, you said Akhil, but I videoed Dr. Akhil Tahir recently in Atlanta. He's Indian, and in India, they have a lot of like chronic diseases there too, but they're predominantly vegetarian.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, dairy is the best thing to get rid of first, really, like.
Oh wow, he's active as a doctor in India saying that?
Yeah, well, he's here now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's saying that, and I keep hearing that from different people. Like dairy is scary. It's like the scariest thing. It's like and it's also the most unethical thing. So do you feel like vegetarians in some ways are potentially even worse than?
No comment, Jeff.
I'm trying to get you in trouble.
No comment, Jeff. No, I totally believe that people should come to the movement on their own terms. I'm not here to shame anybody.
I mean, as far as not as an
dairy
individual.
is trash. Dairy is trash.
Not as an individual, but I mean as the impact that they're having. Yeah.
Well, I always say dairy is dessert. There's nothing innate. There's nothing good in dairy for you. You're eating dairy because you like it. That's it. You can get all the nutrients, all the protein, all the things that dairy contains, calcium. You can get all from plant sources without cholesterol, without saturated fat. Obviously, dairy is not great.
Did you go through any sort of withdrawal?
Great. I totally did. I was a very cranky new vegan for that first week. But like I said, I felt amazing pretty instantly. It was a hard argument to make. And that's why I do believe that ethics are the base of the movement, that how people's bodies feel is just as important. And that massive piece of philosophy around it is extremely important as well, right? If we believe in humans having the capacity to progress past this troubling stage, this diet can help us heal the planet in a way that no other diet can offer. And I feel like it's the three-pronged approach that makes veganism the truly special movement that it is. And now is the time. Now is the time. If you've been wondering about going vegan, it is the most delicious time it's ever been. You'll feel amazing. You should try it.
You said you felt grumpy. Well, anything else going on there, and how long did that happen, and how did you deal with that?
That's a great question, Jeff.
And didn't you feel like maybe you needed a relapse in order to fix that?
Sure. Nourish is in the privileged position of catching a lot of people that have been told to go vegan for their health. So an MD will just, somebody's cardiologist will be like, dude, seriously, you need to stop eating meat. Do it now, or you're in trouble. And so I'll catch these typically middle-aged men. They're afraid. They're like, what do I do? I don't want to eat salad my whole rest of my life. What do we do, And so Nourish is a really great place for them to come because we can show them how delicious it can be to eat vegan. It can be really challenging, but one of the first things that I tell people that are new to the movement, especially if they're coming straight to us, straight to high fiber, super nutrient dense Nourish off of the standard American diet, you're gonna fart a lot. You're gonna have some gas, all right? And it's not going to last forever, but that first couple of weeks, you might find yourself a little bloaty and a little gassy. And that was definitely my experience as well. I was like, dang, all right, and it was funny, but like I said, it passed. Haha. Probiotics are a part of my life. I love kombucha. I love fermented things. And that's part of it too. You take on this new diet, but you also take on a responsibility for your gut biome that maybe you didn't even think about before. So, eating kimchi and using things that cultures have been using for millennia to help digest things more easily, that's definitely part of the vegan diet.
And so you just had faith. You knew you just had to endure this period of time.
I was part of a cleanse group. So when I went vegan, I was part of a cleanse group called 3 Weeks to Wellness that was led by a lady named Elle Erickson. She still lives in Asheville. She's just a shiny, happy fairy of a lady. She's super great. But she's one of those ladies that can be super shiny and happy and then in the next breath be like, what the hell are you doing with your diet? You know, like, are you smoking? Are you serious? You know, she would have these really great confrontational conversations with all of us around the poor health choices that we were making in our lives. And just, she was a good time to be around. It was a great group of people. I feel like, you know, I met Scott from Viva Raw in this group, that Charlie from Bean, you know, a lot of us got our start with this group of humans. I'd been asking myself internally that question since going vegetarian at 13. I'm like, I know I want to go vegan, but I'm not quite there yet, you know, using all these excuses. And Elle was just like, girl, it's time. You know, so she was a big part of it too, like having a support system, doing it with some other people so that you can meal prep together or like share some of the pain or the gas, you know, with your fellow new vegans. So I think, you know, finding some people to do it with was a really important part too.
How interesting do vegan foods get? Now, I was at another restaurant here locally, and they had banana blossoms that they used. I thought that was unique, you know? So how interesting does it get?
I mean, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, I feel like when you narrow your field of cookery to plants only, things can get really cool and really weird. And like I said, I don't think we've fully explored like what plants can do for us yet, you know? You can even make that argument about Impossible Burger. I mean, that's 100% plant. I mean, it's genetically modified, and people have really like taken a strong hand to it, but it's still plant-based, you know? So I feel like we're really gonna see some interesting things made genetically modified, but I still think there's a lot of conversation to have around whole foods, whole vegetables as well. And I think we're just really, you know, tempeh, right, is a great example of us mining thousands-year-old culinary cuisines for something interesting as a protein substitute, right? Indonesia, people have been making tempeh in Indonesia for 3,000 years, you know? So I think even exploring like culinary cultures that aren't our own and being respectful in that exploration, obviously, but taking a note from, you know, millennia of vegan culinary culture will also be more mainstream. I don't think we've seen it all here, especially not in Charlotte, you know?
Is there anything you can share with us that people might not know about, like the banana blossoms or ways to use mushrooms? Because that might be encouraging too.
It was really fun, actually. We did the Charlotte Crave Festival last week. So we're starting to do, as a restaurant, it's kind of a legitimizing force for the culture. You're trying to build a restaurant to go to food festivals, right? And so we started during COVID, so we haven't had the opportunity. So we've gone to a couple of them now and just shown up with really vibrant, delicious vegan fare, locally sourced, and just put it in front of people, right? And we're one of, let's say, 30 restaurants throwing down. We're the only vegan restaurant. It's been a really fun time showing up, doing a good job of cooking, right? So, and I'll tell you about the set in a minute, but doing a really job of cooking vegetables and then having these people that have paid $70 to go to a food festival come back to the table and be like, yours was the best bite. It was amazing. Like, and it was vegan, that's crazy, you know? And like capturing their attention and maybe their imaginations and pulling them into the restaurant, and maybe, you know, they come to our restaurant and then they go to somebody else's vegan restaurant, and then we get their attention a little bit in a way that they never would have been touched before, you know? So this last weekend we did a beautiful oyster mushroom set. So my friend Hiram that owns Urban Gourmet, this is kind of an example of know your farmer, how cool that can be as a chef. You know, I'm like, yo, Hiram, I really want to make a whole bunch of oyster mushrooms. But I want to make scallops out of them, right? So he grows all these different mushrooms, but he brought me 10 pounds of really big, crazy, fat king oyster mushrooms. These are also a beautiful mushroom to take a fork to shred. You know, you can smoke them and shred them and do a really gorgeous, like pulled barbecue set with them. But what we did is we sliced them nice and fat, and we sauteed them in a miso butter, like a Miyoko's butter, miso, a little garlic, just a little tamari to boost the umami flavor, had this gorgeous caramelization on them. And we served them with a little extra miso butter to kind of give them like a liquid fattiness on top of a cauliflower ramp puree. It's ramp season in North Carolina. It's actually over now. It was very short this year. So I got some beautiful foraged ramps, steamed them, and pureed them with this cauliflower to make this gorgeous mash. It was like a very like buttery, lovely, like a very velvety, kind of veloute kind of a mash, right? Had a little butter bean in there, little nooch. And so on that gorgeous bed of velvet was this beautiful buttery oyster mushroom scallop with all this like umami, like juicy butter on it with just a gorgeous little pea shoot to give a nice hint of sweetness. And people, like I had one guy, we were just plating, you know, it was me and Shirley, we were just plating and plating and plating. And he sat there and ate 6 of them in a row. He's like licking the plate each time. He's like, I'm just gonna stand here until you tell me to go. I'm like, sir, please go. Like 6 is enough, thank you. You know, oyster mushroom scallops are kind of low-hanging fruit, you know what I mean? But what else can we do with this mushroom? Like what marrow set can we do with this mushroom? There's just so much more to do, you know? And so I think the more we really focus on it here, the more we'll figure out, but so will other local chefs and other vegan chefs. And so, you know, we're kind of at the beginning of this, I think.
A quote that you would like to share, or a favorite quote, or any quotes?
Not really of anybody else's, but I believe that when you cook for someone, you become part of their life in a really interesting way, right? When you make food for someone, you kind of become part of their body. Like, you're making choices for what they put into their body. That becomes part of their cells, right? That becomes part of their like experience with their body and their health that day. It's a really sacred relationship. You know, I feel like chefs really have a heavier responsibility than we'd like to admit, right? And if we're only out here in the world cooking comfort foods and frying things and doing crazy stuff to food that doesn't actually help or heal the people we're feeding, we're not taking our responsibility seriously enough, right? So I believe in a confluence of really healthy, delicious cooking, but really amazing, savory and gorgeous flavors. And I feel like that movement where chefs come around that idea that not only is what we make marketable and sellable and saleable, but also heals the people that eat it and helps the environment that it comes from. That's an interesting place for me that we're really only starting to talk about. And I'm excited to see what happens over the next few years around that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I talk to my friend who owns a restaurant, I don't feel like he really cares at all if it's healthy. I even told him one time, I said, I'm gonna have a restaurant where it's all healthy. He's like, if people want healthy, they eat at home. I don't believe that though. Do you think that's true?
I think that if you run a restaurant completely on what your profit centers are, you will end up with a restaurant that serves burgers and like chicken wings. Like, that's, you know what I mean? This is what people eat, right? If you talk about, like, I would say if you were to take a data set of Charlotte, North Carolina, and what everybody in town, vegan and non, ate last week, you would have like 60% burgers, 40% chicken sandwiches, 10% pizza, and then everything else, you know, and that's 100%. But, you know, like a small percentage of things outside of that standard things that humans eat in Charlotte, North Carolina. So to a point, I feel like it's true. When you put healthy things on a menu, you're taking a risk. But I think if you educate people about why they're there, if you tell the story about what the vegetables did before getting to that plate, and if you encourage people through loyalty programs and special deals on certain days of the week, if you encourage people to eat this way regularly and they start feeling that in their body, right, then you really start to have important conversations around food, chefs, culinary culture, and health. And I feel like there's just so much more to talk about there.
Do you think we'll ever see a vegan world?
I think that we will see a world that gradually is becoming more vegan. I think that eventually most people will eat this way. I believe in the slow progression though. I don't think that if everybody went vegan tomorrow, that we would have a particularly equitable end for so much of the livestock that's currently on farms. I think that I'd like to see the movement ramp up and move a little more quickly, but I do think that the progression is how it happens equitably for anybody. I do have some sympathy for like family-owned dairy farms that have been here for 100 years. I don't want to see those people out of work, or, I mean, I'd like to see their work change. I wouldn't like to see them out of business and destitute, right? So I think that bringing people along gradually is kind of how the movement happens. You know, we make space for dairy farmers to become mushroom farmers or to become vegetable farmers, you know? But do I believe in a vegan world? I do. I just don't think we'll see it, you know, the next 50 years. I think it'll take a little longer than that.
And how do you encourage others outside of, you know, your businesses? Is there any other ways you go about and you know, the festivals? Have you found anything like where you're working with an individual maybe that's most effective for encouraging others? I'll
shout out my friend Casey here. I feel like we always as vegans do better when we live by example and are kind and accessible and not proselytizing people and not judging people, right? In all things in life, I feel like you lead a better life if you're non-judgmental, right? You have way more fun. But my friend Casey is a really great example. So during the year, the 2020, the COVID year, Nourish was booming, and I had, you know, everything at Nourish works on a spreadsheet. Restaurants tend to work as, you know, recipes or spreadsheets, right? So if you get the math wrong, you can end up with like 10 quarts of like yellow rice quinoa, and you're like, what do I do with this quinoa? And we're fortunate enough to have a lot of people that love us that are in food rescue that we can help donate that stuff to, but at the time I didn't really have a good outlet for it. And so we would pack up leftovers and I would do basically just angel drops. I would just like drive to a number of my friends around my neighborhood, or people that I knew were out of work, and I would drop off bags of food. And so my friend Casey, you know what, he wasn't out of work or anything like that, but at the time he's type 1 diabetes, and he was eating a very meat-heavy diet to kind of manage his carbs, you know, and this is believed, you know, it's believed that this diet can really help, right? If you eat a lot of meat and protein, maybe that helps with your type 1 diabetes. But he started eating vegan because I was dropping all this crazy leftover Nourish to him, just kind of out of the blue. And so over the course of the year, he really found that eating low-fat, whole foods, plant-based can completely change his diabetes, and he's now doing better than he ever has, eating completely vegan, whole foods, plant-based. So I think being a good example, being accessible and being kind, but then also cooking for people and proving to them that vegan food is delicious and accessible and affordable.
Do you have any like unique or interesting tips, quick tips on how to get started or suggestions or anything like that? Like for example, one person said to me, find somebody who's doing it successfully.
Yeah.
I thought that was an awesome tip, and make friends with them,
I think that's a great suggestion. I think, I will shout out in Charlotte anyway. I would say every major city, if you're on Facebook, every major city has a vegan group, okay? And that vegan group can be a great place to ask questions. It's a great place to look for vegan-friendly restaurants or 100% vegan restaurants. It's a great place to look for a mentor if you're like, I really have no idea where to start. I don't want to read books. I'm just feeling extremely overwhelmed, but I know I want to do this. Vegans are funny because we want you to go vegan, right? And so we will make time to make sure you feel supported in your journey. A really easy way to get started is finding your city's big vegan group and joining it, and then kind of going from there. Go to your local VegFest. Even if you don't live in a city that has a VegFest specifically for that city, if you go to the nearest VegFest, you will meet vegans from your city that traveled to that VegFest. You will learn about products that you didn't know existed that are either made in your town or a neighboring town. VegFests are meant to do that. VegFests are meant to gather communities together physically so that everybody meets each other and mingles and is inspired. So those would be my two biggest pieces of advice.
And do you have any regrets?
Not a single one. I've never been this healthy. My blood work is gorgeous. People tell me that I don't look 41. This is the way. This is obviously the way, I will say that if I ever missed anything at the beginning of going vegan, it was cheese, but like I said, there's no argument for feeling this well, and it's true. Try it.
Now, was there ever a time before you went vegan and you thought, there's no way I could go vegan?
Yes, in the 90s for sure as a vegetarian, as a vegetarian that likes to eat. And I moved to New York. I lived in New York City for 10 years. Even in the city with access to some of the world's best vegan food, cheese kept me. So I think it's okay to move on the timeline that you need to move on. But I think it's really important to go fully vegan. And I believe in whole foods, plant-based vegan, where we're trying to be a little more aware of our fat content and intake and like fried foods. My body is happiest there. Like I love bread, but when I eat gluten-free, I feel better. And so I think everybody's on a journey here, but I think when you really start to tune into how your body feels after you eat, I'm talking like an hour after, 3 hours after, 5 hours after, really think about how you feel, you'll get pickier about what you put in your body.
You've already shared a success story. Do you have any other success stories you want to share?
Of people that I've interacted with over the years?
Yeah, like helping somebody go vegan,
sure.
Or whether you're involved or not.
I love Casey's story because I don't think he did not plan on going vegan, but here he is. And he's doing better with his diabetes than he's ever done. It's amazing to me. He's like modeling behavior that nobody thinks would work, and his body is so happy. I love it. But another story, there's this lovely woman, Benita. Benita and I are still friends. Benita lives outside of Raleigh, but she worked for Nourish for a few years. She was on her way out she had been convicted of something kind of ridiculous, and she was on her way out of the system, and she was working for Nourish in the meantime. So she was almost out of the system, and we had her for a year and a half at Nourish, and she was like immediately rose to like the top of our workforce. She was like the Monday morning coordinator. She was like lead chef. She was amazing. Benita's amazing. And she wasn't vegan before she started working for the company, but she was interested, right? And so when she came to work, and we just filled her life with like extremely delicious organic vegan food, and she took it home with her to where she was staying, which the food where she was staying was ridiculously bad for you. And she ate this way for a year, and it changed her life. Like she's still vegan to this day. She's turned her whole family vegan. They've been posting on Facebook yesterday this whole big cookout they did, and everything was vegan. And she looks like she's reversing in age. I mean, she was always radiantly beautiful. I'm like, it's been 7 years since I've had her at Nourish, and she just looks like 30. It's amazing. So I feel like it's accessibility for her. And learning to cook it, right? Because she cooked everything in the kitchen. She was amazing. She was talented. So she got to learn how to all our different techniques, And so when she left and she moved to Raleigh, she took all those techniques with her, and she used them to turn her family vegan. And I just love it. I feel like there's this idea of it being really difficult to do, but it really isn't that difficult. And if you do it for a few weeks and feel how your body sits in it, you'll stay.
Any encouraging words for restaurants or cooks or chefs to consider this? Like consider adding more vegan options, or even consider going all vegan? I
would say it seems a little bit retro and ignorant at this point not to at least be cooking a few things for vegans on your menu, right? It makes, for me, when I see a restaurant that it's not really reaching for vegans at all, it just seems kind of, I don't know, it seems old, it seems silly, you know what I mean? We used to be a smaller percent of the population, but we're approaching 10%. you're leaving money on the table, you know, and it's only going to get denser. We are only going to welcome more people to the movement. There are all these different ways to think about how to be a good person on the planet. It's a great diet for that. Like I said, the future is huge. And so I think come with us into the future. Look cooler sooner, you know, and at least make something delicious for vegans on your menu. If not, consider making a wide portion, if not your whole menu vegan.
Is there any kind of like resources or anything that they could check out for that specifically restaurants?
There's definitely every bulk food system, Cisco, US Foods, all the big box, people have tons of bulk vegan options now. They didn't, even as close as 2 years ago, there wasn't a lot of options that you could get bulk and get good pricing on, but there is now. And if you're not sure how to cook them, ask a rep to come out and show you. They want your business, you know? And then honestly, everywhere, there's vegan chefs everywhere. So ask us. We want to help. We want to see you succeed. We want to, you know, we don't consider you competition. We just want more vegans to be able to have better access to more vegan food. Personally, please come and talk to me. I would love to show you what we do, you know? So I think that's a piece too. You know, the vegan movement, the vegan chef movement specifically is pretty anti-capitalist because we don't believe in like keeping the secrets and like keeping the market share. We want to see things grow. So any advice we can give, we're here for.
Would you ever be with somebody who isn't vegan?
Absolutely not. But that's a fun story too. You know, I went vegan and my husband did not. And I told him that I would only be cooking vegan in the house. And this was me handling my addictive stuff too, right? Because I knew cheese was my problem. And so my man ate a lot of cheese outside the house. He would eat like pizza late at night, right? This is like our 20s. So my guy is like hanging out at like Snug Harbor and then eating pizza at night. And he was sitting at his desk one day and he had this like corporate job he no longer has. He hated this job. He was sitting at his desk and he was wearing a business shirt and the shirt split. Not along a seam, you know what I mean? No, there was no reason for the shirt to go, all right? But it did. And at that moment he was like, all right. He's like, no more late night cheese pizza. I'm going vegan too. And he's never looked back. He's in like the best health he's been in. You know, you can't argue with how you feel. You know, the ethics make sense. Like there's just a lot of like we were talking about cognitive dissonance, you know, like in your life as a human, you try to do well, you try to do good, right? You want to be in the world and make good happen. And I feel like how you are as a consumer is part of that, right? And being part of this movement helps address some of the bigger concerns about how capitalism interfaces with the planet and how food interfaces with your personal system. So I think it's an easy argument, but you have to give it a little time. You can't go vegan for a week. You got to give us a month. At the end of that month, I guarantee you'll feel better and you'll stick with us.
How can people learn more about you? I guess you got websites for both Nourish and Plant Joy and all that. So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Plant Joy is open Wednesday to Sunday. We do a gorgeous brunch set every Sunday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Plant Joy Charlotte, plantjoyclt.com. We're on IG, on Instagram, we're on socials. Please follow us. Please come out to the restaurant. We would love to feed you. And then if you're looking for really beautiful, award-winning, sustainable vegan meal prep, nourishcharlotte.com. Would love to bring you some food, help make that transition easier, or just help you in your health journey.